Today's day 2 after my mental breakdown.
During that week, I had a lot of things happen, and one thing that happened was I fell asleep editing, and I had my headphones on. I usually wear these for noise canceling all the time. The hospital machines were beeping, and everything, it was constantly replaying in my head. So when I woke up, those beeps were so loud, and my ears were ringing, and I could hear the hospital beeps over and over and over. It was intense, and I could hear my heart beating out of my chest. Like I was crying. It was unbearable, and I was asking God to just please help me. And then I started to have like static electricity, and I could hear noises that were like a CB. After that, what scared me when I pleaded to God was I heard the most frightening growls from hell that you could ever freaking imagine. It was unbearable, and it was the scariest thing I've ever heard in my entire freaking life. And I'll never forget it. Ever. Ever. That's kind of where it started, and then it just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. And it's hard for me to share this story, but I need to, because I know there's so many out there, whether you're a woman or a man. But it did push me to the brink of insanity. You have some type of mental, psychological trauma. So whether it's post-traumatic stress or psychosis, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I truly wouldn't understand. When soldiers come home from the war and they have post-traumatic stress and psychosis, how they murder their family, because you cannot tell what's real and what is not.
You be paranoid and hear voices in your head. Like, I did not understand that. And I was having a really hard time. I've had a hard time. I've just been numb since my mom died. I couldn't even cry anymore. When you experience psychological issues and you're confined somewhere, or you're in a place for a certain time, you know, they have something called like cabin fever, and this is what it is. I've been stuck in my room and have not gone out of my house without my husband to a doctor's appointment. It was the only time I would get out with my husband. Somewhere else, and I always stayed in my room because my dad would trigger my allergic reactions to my medical condition, mast cell activation disorder. Say you can help your loved one get through it, because I'll tell you, even medical professionals cannot understand it on this level. And it's many times like, it's one thing to have the education, it's a whole nother ballpark to live through it. And I lived through this. And I don't ever want to go through anything like this again. I would not want anybody to go through this, because I thought, okay, good, I got things. straightened out. Everything's all good to go, and I'll be fine. But I'm dealing with the aftermath of this. I'm a crying hot mess. The things that you're capable of when you have a mental breakdown are crazy, and how your brain needs to justify it. And my brain justified this stuff. It's just insane as I talk it, because I'm just like, I can't even believe I believed it.
I have not been out of this house in a year and a half.
Stuck in this room forever. It happened in here, so it must be true. That's what I kept telling myself over and over again. It happened in here, I remember it, it must be true. So I envisioned my husband at the door over here, and he was with the neighbor. Well, it's hard for me, and I get reactions and I stumble my words, so bear with me. He was with him and then two girls and then another guy. I had never met him prior to that, so my brain already made a person for that, associated with it. And it was nothing like what I dreamed, so that was another indication it was not real. Even though you remember it and it's very vivid, Starr, it did not happen. Okay? It didn't happen. But it happened in here, it must be true. That's what I kept telling myself. I pretended to be asleep in my dream. I was turned, like I think on my stomach, or my head was turned. And I remember Robert walking away from me, and he's like, okay, then I guess you're going to the hospital. And walked off. And door, and I was asleep. I was closing my eyes, and I was closing the eye next to them shut like this, and that eye open so I could watch to find out, okay, they're gonna murder us, because I was convinced my husband was gonna murder me and shoot me to death. And that in my IV bag for my IV fluids, he had a bunch of heparin and laundry soap in my bag, and he was gonna give it to me. And I got to the point where I told God, okay, let's make a deal. I don't want to go through the gunshots and survive, or if I get strangled. So let me just take and go peacefully, because I don't want to deal with the pain. You know, let me just take myself out, and then they'll be okay. Because I was convinced that he was going to shoot me. Now, you have to put yourself in that place, right? You have to ground yourself with your surroundings. Luckily, I took my pills and it put me to sleep. I kept telling myself, let me just never wake up again. And I was convinced that they were making my daughter lie. And I went to my daughter and asked her, did I go to the hospital to tell mommy the truth? No, you did. I woke her up at 2 a.m. convinced, because I was convinced there was somebody over there on my daughter's bed watching me the whole time. Now it sounds crazy, right? But it happened in here. It must be true, right? You remember vivid dreams. You remember what happens real. But if you wake up and go to sleep in the same environment all the same time, this can happen to anybody. I've never had psychiatric issues. I've never had psychotic issues. Ever in my life. And I've been through a lot where I clearly could have. But this was a true mental breakdown.